Welcome to 2018. My name is Imudite Mauritius. I'll be your tutor for the module MAT ACS. For your ACSE mathematics examination preparation, the following key points, which do not necessarily make a scope, might be helpful. Remember that these points do not necessarily mean that you should neglect other parts of your course outline, as they have equal chances to appear in the examination. While on that, when you are preparing for your April, August and November examinations, I advise you to make use of the grade 11-12 syllabus, and also as an additional material, make use of the y is equal to mx plus c textbook. To start off with this presentation, when you are preparing for examinations, you should look at number systems. Look at the different types of numbers, like we have natural numbers, integers, squares, odd numbers, prime numbers, and so on. You should be able to look at fractions, how to solve fractions. For example, if you have to add fractions, let me say we have an example of 1 over 2 plus 3 over 4. So you should be able to solve this without using a calculator. So this method is to make the denominators the same. That's the simple method you can use now. You can say, so you multiply this by 2, and also you multiply that by 2, and you multiply the numerator and the denominator of the other fraction by 4. So you should be able to do this without using a calculator. So this will be, for example, we have a 4 there. What we get here is a 8 plus, what do we have here? We have 6 over 8. So now that the denominator is the same, you're going to add the top and also keep the denominator as it is. So in its simplest form, this will be 5 over 4. So know how to work with fractions. Also, look at percentage. For example, you should know percentages increase and decrease. Moving on, you should be able to look at money, ratio, and estimation. So fractions, percentages, money, and the ratio, they work together. So just know how to do calculations on them. Moving on to algebra. No algebraic representations. You should be able to factorize. We have different methods on factorization. So you can use quadratic trinomials. You can use grouping. You can use you can use completing the square and other methods. So also you should when it comes to algebra, you should be able to solve equations with powers, like that is indices, for example. And you should also be able to solve expressions with indices. A good example will be when it comes to indices. A good example will be, for example, let me say you are given that you have 2 to the power of n plus 1 multiplied by 3 to the power of n over 2 to the power of n times 6 to the power of n. So you should be able to solve this expression, and the following are the steps that you should follow. You should express each number in terms of their prime factors. So the 2 is fine, you leave it as it is like that, write it, and the 3 also is fine. Then you have a 2 below, keep it the way it is, and then you have to change 6 to, write it as a power of its prime factors. So 6 is the same as 3 multiplied by 2. So, and you still keep the n there. So then the next step will be to apply indices laws. So you write the base as it is, which is 2, and then on the numerator you have 2 to the power of n plus 1. Now how do you get rid of the 2 that is written there as a denominator? You apply the laws of indices, you subtract n, and then you also have a 3 on top there. You have a 3 on top, and you keep it, okay, you keep it as it is, and then this is to over 3 to the power of n. Now we are expanding the 6 or the 3 times 2 there, multiplied by 2 to the power of n. The next step will be, again, you have denominators there that you need to get rid of. So what you do, you still on top there, now you have 2 to the power of n plus 1 minus n. If you check very well there, you have a denominator which is 2 to the power of n there. Again, you still have to subtract n, and then you keep the 3 that is up there raised to the power of n. If you check very well on your denominators there, you have 3 to the power of n, so you have to subtract n from there, and at the end of the day you have n minus n, which is 0, but you'll be left with 2 you have 2 1 minus n, because the other two n's will cancel each other, and then 3 to the power of 0, and the end result will just be 2 to the power of 1 minus n. So you should be able to do that. For example, moving on, I said you should be able to look at completing the square. There are different ways you can complete the square. These are the most troublesome areas that learners find difficult. So when you are given, for example, let me say you are given an expression. Let me say you are given x to the power of 2 minus 5x plus 6. Now you can be asked, for example, to write it in the form of a bracket, let me say x minus b plus c. So what do? You have to complete the square, and these are the steps. What you do, you have to make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. First of all, make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. In other words, there must be a 1 here. If there was a number that is different from a 1, you first have to divide throughout by that number. So now that we have a 1 there, what we're gonna do, we create brackets, and then write x. We subtract the coefficient of x, and we divide that one by 2, and then we square it, and then you subtract the square of what you have divided by 2 there, subtract the square there, and then you add the constant, which is 6. So, and then you do more calculations. You keep this one as it is. You have 5 over 2 squared minus, we have 25 over 4 plus 6. Now here you do your calculations. Go further and say you have x minus 5 over 2 squared. Make the denominators the same. What do you have? You have 25 over 4 plus 6 multiplied by 4 is 24, and it's over 4. Move on and write the next step. 5 over 2 squared minus, okay, what do you have there? We have negative 1 over 4. If you use your calculator, that is what you will have. And now our a is equal to 1, our b is equal to negative 5 over 2, and our c is equal to negative 1 over 4. So you are done. Those are the steps that you follow when you are completing the square. So there are a lot of things that you should do, you should be able to do on algebra. So you should also be able to do things like long division and so on. So make use of your syllabus and attend to attend to all your objectives. The next topic that you should be able to look at is polynomials, equations, and inequalities. So I think I have spoken much about polynomials. So a closer look at linear and quadratic equations, I have done that under algebra. So the only thing that you should be able to do also is linear inequalities. You should be able to solve linear inequalities. So for example, if you are to solve the following, if you are given to solve to represent the following on the number line, you have let me say you have 2x greater than 5x minus 3 greater than 5x plus 10. That is just an assumption. So what you do this. Solve this part separately. That is that you have 2x less than 5x minus 3. And solve the other part separately. This part here. And 5x minus 3 less than 5x plus 10. All right. The next step after that is to concentrate on the first part. So now you take the inequality to represent an equal sign. So you solve this just like you are solving a normal equation. So what you do, you have to say, for example, now you have a 3 less than 5x minus 2x, and the other one, let us solve them simultaneously. The other one will be 5x. Alright, I think there's a mistake somewhere. Let us take this one to be a 9. So we have a 9 there. So the next step will be negative 3 minus 10 less than 9x minus 5x. So solving these two as we continue, now you have 3 less than 3x, and you have negative 13 less than 4x. So x is greater than 1 and x is greater than x is greater than x, and x is my apology for that, x is greater than negative 13 over 4. Alright, so you should be able to do those steps. So the next topic is logarithms and sequences. Should know the laws of logarithms, how to add, divide, multiply, and subtract logarithms. They work in hand with indices and sequence. So when it comes to sequence, we have two types of sequences. We have arithmetics and geometrical progressions. So you should know how to do calculations on both of them. Graphs and functions. You should be able to manipulate graphs in practical situations. For example, you are given a distance time graph. They can ask you to find the speed using a distance time graph. Also, you should be able to solve equations graphically. What does that mean? For example, you are given two straight line graphs on one grid. Now you should be able to solve for the variables x and y. So how do you solve for, let me say you are given a Cartesian plane. Let me say you are given a Cartesian plane. X and y. Now we assume that we have a line like that one and another line. We have A and B. Now we want to solve for x and y. So remember, this is an equation in the form of y is equal to ma x plus c, and then this is also an equation, a line in the form of y is equal to mb x plus c. I'm using ma here to represent the gradient of that line, and mb to represent the gradient of line B. Now if we want to solve these two equations, we want to find the values of y and x. What we do, you indicate on your graph, you go down from the point of intersection to the x-axis, and you read off the value of x from there. So that will be, this will be the value of x, and again you go back to the point of intersection, move horizontally to the y-axis. The number that is there will make the y value. So now you have two values, y and x. Curved graphs. We have, for your level, you are allowed to look at two types of curved graphs. We have parabolas and hyperbolas. So learners or students, whenever you are asked to draw curved graphs, make sure that you draw a smooth curve using a pencil and not a ruler, so it must be free hand. Now combined graphs, again you should be able to solve combined graphs or equations of combined graphs. So for example, if you have a parabola, this is x, that is y. So this is a parabola in the form of y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, and you have another, you also have another graph of a straight line that is in the form of y is equal to mx plus c. If they say solve for x and y when the two intersect, this is what you do. You go at their point of intersection, you have four values, 2 for y and 2 for x. So you go down to the rid of the first x value, and you go down to the y axis, rid of the first y value, and then also for the other two, you go from the point of intersection down to the x-axis, rid of the second x value, and again from the point of intersection going to the y-axis, rid of the second y value. So that is how you solve combined or equations graphically of combined graphs. So if they say use your graph to solve for y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c and y is equal to mx plus c, you should indicate exactly like it's done here on your graph where you are taking your values from. If you do not indicate this, you might lose marks. Alright, moving on to functions and linear programming. Functions notation, you have inverse functions. You should be able to solve or to find a function, inverse functions. Let me say if you are given that y is equal to 2x plus 3, to find the inverse of this, remember y can be written as f of x. In other words, what I have on top there can be expressed as f of x is equal to 2x plus 3, and an inverse will be represented by this symbol, or just that. Now to find an inverse function of this, there are certain steps that you should follow. You should for example, you have to exchange x and y. So you have y is equal to 2x plus 3. Now what you do, at the place you replace y by x, and you replace x by y. So you write it like that, and then you solve for y. In other words, try to make y the subject of the formula. So now you have x minus 3 is equal to 2y. So divide both sides by 2. Then you have y is equal to x minus 3 over 2. So this y represents an inverse. So you don't leave your answer in this form. It should be written as f of inverse x is equal to x minus 3 over 2. That is how you do it. Moving on to composite functions. Let me say you are told that, okay, you have y is equal to 2x plus 3, and you also have another function, let me say h is equal to 3x. Let me make this to be g of x. Alright, so the question can say find gh, find gh, or they can say find hg. Now what you do, you solve this from behind. It can be like this. So this means that you should put h in g. So if we are to solve this one, I have g, which is 2x plus 3. Now wherever I see x, I'll put h, the whole of h, which is 3x, and then plus 3. So meaning that g of h is equal to that. And then you just simplify it so that it is 6x plus 3. So that is what you do. The same thing you can do for that. Moving on to linear programming, you should be able to use or draw graphs of inequalities involving one variable. One variable, it means that you have, for example, just x or y. You should also be able to represent inequalities involving two variables, that is both x and y. And you should also be able to draw graphs of combined inequalities. Or if not drawing graphs, then you should be able to come up with equations from a graph of inequalities. Coordinate geometry. Coordinate geometry. Under this topic, you should be able to find the midpoint. Like you are given two coordinates, and you should be able to find the midpoint of those 2 points. Also, you should be able to find equations of a straight line given 2 points, or let me say a point and its gradient. You should also be able to find the distance between 2 points. Geometry. Geometrical terms and relationships. You should know angles properties. Angles in quadrilaterals, angles in circles, angles of triangles, and others, and also polygons. You should also be able to look at similarity, that is area and volume of objects. You should be able to look at constructions, do some constructions on locus. So in other words, for your examinations, you should be having a math set which you can use as your instrument to construct lines or anything that has to do with construction. You should be able to look at symmetry and geometrical properties. So that is lines of symmetry. You should also be able, for example, to get the rotational order and so forth. Mensuration. This topic covers perimeter area and total surface area of solids, shapes, and any other. So you should be able to find the perimeter of a shape. For example, let me say a parallelogram. Should be able to calculate area of a circle, a sector, for example. You should also be able, for example, to find, when it comes to area, sometimes they can ask to find area of a sector, and they can also ask to find the length of an arc. So you should be able to do calculations on those objectives. Trigonometry should be able to do calculations on 90-degree triangles. So Pythagoras theorem, how to find the area of 90-degree triangles, and do bearings, elevation and depression, things like that. We should also be able to do calculations on non-90-degree triangles. That is how to apply the cosine and sine rules. So to find the area of a triangle, non-90-degree triangle, the length and stuff like that. Statistics. Here you should be able to look at grouping data. So group data, do calculations on tables or non-group data. You should also be able to display data. Now you have different methods of displaying data. That is a pie chart, histogram, bar chart, and all of that. So you should be able to manipulate that. In other words, you should be able to draw histograms, for example. You should be able to draw pie charts using your compasses and stuff like that. Probability. Look at single events and combined events. So know how to find probabilities when you are given a single event, and also combined events where you, for example, use 3 diagrams. Transformation and vectors. When it comes to transformation, you should be able to look at things like translation, enlargement, rotation, and the remaining one. Vectors. When it comes to vectors, you should be able to find a magnitude of a vector, represent it on a diagram. Should be able to find position vectors, add, subtract, addition, and multiplication of vectors. Should be able to do calculations on vector geometry, and also base vectors. This is the end of the presentation. Just a reminder, make use of your syllabus and then other additional material, which is the y is equal to mx plus c ordinary level. Thank you very much.